In this lesson, we will create a line landscape. So what exactly is a landscape? A landscape is an example of a work of art that is done outside. There are many different types of landscapes. They can be of deserts, flowers, oceans, mountains, and so many other types of things from many different perspectives. Let's take a look at this picture of mountains. You can see in the foreground, the part of the picture that's closest to you, that the colors are very brown. We can see that those rocks on that left-hand side are lit up. But when we look further into the background, we can see that kind of darkish bluish purple mountain behind it, and then an even lighter colored mountain behind that in the background. And then the sky completely behind the mountains that we can see. That's something called atmospheric perspective. Atmospheric perspective is when the further something is back, the lighter and lighter it appears in the background. Here is a wonderful example of what atmospheric perspective looks like. You can see in the foreground that those first sets of mountains are very dark, but as you move further and further in the background, as those mountains continue to go behind and behind and behind that darkest mountain, they get lighter and lighter. That is called atmospheric perspective. So the next time you're on a mountain, maybe check for atmospheric perspective. Look out and see if mountains in the distance appear to get lighter and lighter. Not only when we are looking at a landscape do we notice changes in color that we see that is created by something called atmospheric perspective, like we had talked about, but we can also notice a very interesting and unique type of line on the top of each of the mountain peaks. Let's move into our activity, using line to create an interesting mountain landscape. Alrighty, here is my complete line landscape work of art. As you can see, I did waves at the bottom and then I did different types of mountains. I also did a sun in the background. You can see that the different types of lines I use are kind of wavy, kind of curvy, a little bit zigzag. I wanted them to kind of represent the different types of mountains. For this lesson, you could use crayons, you could use colored pencils, markers work really, really well also. I'm going to be using colored pencils for this lesson, and you're also going to be needing a white piece of paper. It can just be a piece of computer paper if you like. The first thing that you're going to do is you're going to start by creating just one line for each of your mountains or whatever you're going to add in. Maybe you want to do trees in the bottom, an interesting tree line. I did waves because that's nice and simple. That's an easy line to create. Now I'm going to choose my next color and I'm going to make my first mountain range. Just a nice kind of wavy line. I'm going to choose my next color now. It does not have to have atmospheric perspective, making the colors look lighter and lighter. You can do that if you would like. That'll just add another dimension to your project, but I'm kind of just using fun colors. They don't have to match what mountains would actually look like. That is my final mountain. That one was kind of curved. And I'm also doing a sun, so I'm just going to make a simple circle. You could make yours kind of behind a mountain, like it's setting or it's rising. I made mine a full circle. Now I'm going to start adding my lines. As you can see, I went pretty close to that first wave line that I created. I'm mimicking or copying that line underneath it. I'm going to go even tighter. It's kind of hard to see with how close I'm actually going to that next line. The closer and tighter you go between each of your lines, the more interesting your line landscape is going to look. As you can see, I'm going really, really close. I'm holding my pencil very close to the tip. It'd be much harder for me to do this. I was holding very far back on my pencil. So in order for me to do this, I'm holding very closely to the very tip of my pencil. and I'm pushing down hard so I can see my lines. Again, this may be easier doing a different material. Maybe you want to use crayons. Markers are easy as well because those show really easily. I'm using colored pencils because I feel like I have the most control using those and I can make really, really tight lines. This is going to take you quite some time. You might want to take breaks, your hand might cramp up, but that's okay. It's going to end up looking so awesome in the end. You might also notice that my lines start from one side of my paper to the other side of the paper. I do not stop before the paper ends, and I do not start after the paper starts. I'm going right from one end to the other. We don't want our lines floating. We want them to go completely across the page. That's another really important thing to keep in mind when you're creating your line landscape. One thing to keep in mind as you get closer and closer to the bottom is you might not be able to fit your entire line. What you're going to notice is I'm actually not going to draw a full line for my very last line after this one that I'm creating. I'm only going to do parts because that line would come off the page. Here I go. Oh, just a little triangle. Just a little triangle. Another one, another one, another one, and my last one. So I did not do a full line. That line would not fit, so I just did a part of my line. Now I'm going to move on to my next mountain. I'm doing the same exact thing, except now I'm just following a different line. My first line was kind of zigzag, like a wave line. This one's more of a wavy line. A little bit easier to recreate. I'm going to fast forward the rest of this video, but I wanted to wait until this part here. As you can see, I'm getting really close to my blue lines for my waves. I'm going to only create part of my lines, just like I did at the bottom of the page. So you can see that I started my green line, and I'm not going over my blue line. I'm not drawing my lines over. I'm doing them behind. Oh, just a little tiny part, and then I end it when it gets to that next wave and continue it behind it. I want my blue wave to be in front of my green mountain. I'm going to continue on finishing the rest of my piece using this exact same technique.